Hey everybody, this is James Davis again. Back to making. What I decided to do was, after the reactions from the 25 and 50 cent No Limit videos, make like a little series of videos, kind of chronicling as I moved up through the limits. So, obviously in a 40 or 40. Show every single way that you would change your play, but hopefully we'll get involved in some of that stuff today. I have not played $1 No Limit in a really, really long time. I'm not sure if I've ever even played a hand at these limits before, but what I anticipate is that my opponents enjoy similar to the players with them take a stand. But one thing I'm realizing is that 3-betting these regulars here might be fundamentally aren't going to be able to 4-bet as a bluff. So if I'm going to be 3-betting aces, I might need to be 3-betting a lot of stuff. Similarly, I will be opening a fair amount of hands, trying to see to what degree they're going to be willing to 3-bet me pre-flop. So immediately I get 3-bet for pot. I am going to take a little stand here, since I've just 3-bet somebody else and 4-bet. And if he jams it in on me, that's too bad. But I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to test the waters here. I'm trying to figure out how likely these guys are 3-betting pre-flop and so on. Also, if you hear me coughing a bit today, and he folds, so now we know that's definitely something worth making a note on. If you hear me coughing a little bit today, I'm really sorry. I've been pretty sick the last few days, and hopefully we can make the video worth your while anyway. So yeah, a good amount of pre-flop aggression can actually reap some pretty good rewards. I'm curious. I'm going to be curious to see how my opponents are able to handle someone who can lay on the gas, so to speak. Okay, I raise ace-6 off suit, bow coup. I'm going to assume stack. It's in $1 No Limit. I'm going to assume that he's and leading into a flop like this is. We're just going to dump it. Pretty standard open. And these, I'm noticing that both my tables seem like fairly tight. You've got bullet folds going on all over the place. Alright, well maybe this will give us a good chance to explore how to beat up on some regulars in the 50-cent $1 game. I'm going to assume that a lot of these guys buying in for college kids, or as I call them, fledgling professionals who are trying to work their way up the limits. I don't think there's going to be quite as many this time of day, so game casual players will be European players. A lot of them will be. So people are just fold and fold and fold. I think I'm going to start, just for the sake of, for education's sake, I'm going to start playing some pretty loose hands. Purposes and as a recommendation on how you should play. So the acorn We have 29 hands on him already. He's 14-14, which is pretty tight. And he 3-bets me right. I'm somewhat tempted to 4-bet him again. To be honest with you, it's kind of 10 off, 4-6 off are basically the same hand, but I'm gonna give him this one. That he needs to be but I am gonna 4-bet this guy. I'm not sure if he's sophisticated enough to realize that the best time to. Okay, so these guys have learned a thing or two. No one taught them about 4-betting yet, so they might be in trouble versus us. A sophisticated game is to just open some more, okay, so let's someone he 4-bets, I fold. Does that? We'll start. No, that's not what I was trying to say. A lot of people think that after that you should tighten up your range, but I think most people are capable of thinking on the next level, which is this guy. So what you should do is actually keep a pretty wide range and continue to put them to the test. And then at that point, frequency would suggest that definitely at the higher stakes games, you need to be willing to just get it right back in there aggressively, as you have been doing. Me a lot more than the guy. So I am going to defend here and try. I could just call. But like I was saying, any sense, and now these guys are 3-betting me a fair amount, so that's certainly remember. Continues. Okay, so this guy leads for almost full pot. But I like my hand so far. Only in that it's going to give him the opportunity, and it's going to. I mean, it makes it pretty hard for me to contest the pot or make a play at. I'm going to think though. And if we think about the sorts of hands, and let's think again. People were saying that a lot of small stakes mantra is to guys trying to play well, that maybe he thinks that way. So I'm going to try to take the pot. It's an educational exercise. Not saying that this is the best play, but just jams it in. So now I can get away. It's interesting. Big and stack off with there. Perhaps he thought it was a time. I mean, it was in this case because if we one thing I like to do when I'm making my notes is if there was a speed with which my opponent made his action, I like to, because oftentimes unsophisticated players, even at the limits I play 10-20 and up, oftentimes these unsophisticated players, now I'm just going to call it the nines actually, these unsophisticated players will the same with their action. I can't one because because someone led for full pot instantly on the river, and I had a note that said, whatever, you know, if they made it. So now I'm gonna just fold the nines. We weren't like trying to make a set necessarily, but we were trying to make an ace jack 2 board. Like this, because once again I think that's a great way to exploit players who are trying to play well but haven't really seen all the tricks yet. I'm going to call Boku's minimum bet. Bets more we'll give up. So I think Acorn's trying to play well. Ace Jack doesn't play so great out of position. So I'm going to 3-bet him. We do have kind of a bluffy image. Four-handed here. I don't think four-handed. We've been doing it to him so much. Instantly. I'm not going to give him credit for being sophisticated enough to make a play like this. We'll fold and we'll just keep an eye on him. That'll be something that's interesting. I mean, if we see regulars and he just gets away, I think he's kind of sick of playing at this table. It makes sense, it's all regular. This Royal guy is probably regular also. Impressions when I was saying that the games were very similar was, I mean, a much more aggressive pre-flop game. The guys at the 25 and 50 cent games were, which is going to call for some major adjustments. Okay. See, this is going to be a good spot, I think, where we can go back to that concept I talked about in the previous video at 25. Well, people will often call the first bet with a pocket pair. I mean, Boku just jamming in probably. I think we have to call against him. Yeah, 6 outs. And call with a pocket. But as I continue to apply pressure, they won't be able to continue to call down. So I think that's a good point to start creating and trying to force people to make decisions for their whole stacks in situations where it would normally be incorrect to do so at these stakes. We're disappointed. Boku limp. Just kind of our when we have the kings. We're gonna open if it's folded to us, so I can make this. Camtasia instead of using the trial version, so if it's not highlighting the cursor, that's in, and we've had some okay spots, so I'm gonna just keep this. Okay, this guy really quiet so far. Could consider squeezing because I do like having the 2 high cards, turning this hand into a bluff. I'm not gonna cold call. But like I said, I don't mind queens and jacks out of his range. When he checks an ace, queen, 5 flop, I'm tending through kings, excluding queens, or he has a monster like ace, queen, or ace. I'm a little less convinced. I think he has kings. The 10s, same thing. So that makes sense. I think he probably played it okay. Definitely no sense in betting the river. It's an interesting decision if you check though. Because I do. And if when he bets, because he'll often check behind, obviously, it's the king high and jack high hands. Because they stand to be good a decent amount of time. One thing I'm going to be keep track of how frequently my opponents are semi-bluffing or just firing off multiple barrels in games like this. So we've got to figure 24-24's button opening range is pretty wide. He calls me pretty quickly. I am going to continuation bet it. And he folds immediately. So I'll put him on like a Broadway hand, maybe like ace-jack. Could be even ace-king. I don't know how frequently guys like to get it in with ace-king in these limits. So we're going to... And he folds it right away. So now we're instilling a little bit of fear, which is always fun. Some stats on these guys. To have stats on any of these players coming in, so I did and PA HUD working. To be honest, I don't play on full tilt all that much, so I mean, all right. So I'm not sure what that means. Suited connector or small pair. This, I mean, it's bad. A hand like 9-10 or 6-7 or 8-7. Queen Jack, like all these hands. Less and less as we continue betting. I mean, we do need to be aware. Second on the hand. Queen 9-6. I do in games like this. Out what sorts of hands I'm going to fire 3 barrels with, and we have to be cognizant of board texture because like a 10 is for us on the turn, completes a lot of draws and makes one more. Whereas like a deuce, I would always be continuation betting. It's almost like this guy posted under the gun. And does nothing. I can't assume that he can do anything, but we do have aces, so we're gonna start putting him under pressure. But to go back to what I was saying, I think instead of, bluffing scare cards is clearly correct in games like these also, but I think bluffing blanks is a very powerful move against we're trying to play well. Really haven't figured out all the concepts yet. So this guy has now open limped a few hands, including one on the button. We're going to start to figure that he's not the strongest player, but we're going to have to keep an eye out. But what I was saying about my c-betting strategy. Okay, now the 2 is a good card for us. Oh, blue tig. He did call a flop. I'm going to fire one more. If he calls here, I have a double gutter now, a 3 or a 6, but in limped pots, people tend not to want to put too much money in with that. A really good hand. And strategy against players who are trying to play well. Bluff all scare cards and all blanks against players like that, then I don't like to bluff leading or draw making cards as much, if that makes sense. Like on the Queen 9-6 board, because it makes a lot of stack off with. Necessarily to call a flop with, you know. That's ultimately what I would be saying, right? Because on a Queen 9-6, 10-8 is a double gutter, Jack 10 is an open ender, obviously 7 is an open ender, and it just makes our whole bluffing process. So I don't know with all, but guys have strategies I know. Converged quite yet, and I know that we'll have to be aware of that. You know, like it's not necessarily true that this guy's actually 32-32 just because he played like that over 40 hands, but still, I think a lot of these guys are playing decent tag, bordering on leg styles. Now, Ghost or Green Ghost, maybe Troy, the Lockman or the Lokeman. So now we're gonna assume this is from Mass. We're gonna try a lot of strategies, games. Try to focus more on, to a certain degree, like Bocoup is certainly a loose. The Green Ghost joins us and instantly limp re-raises all in. Chances are good that he had some sort of pair. I would say pairs are the most likely hand that people limp re-raise. Okay, so we have Queen 10. I'm mostly re-raising just to test this guy a little bit. He has been playing, so I suspect that he can raise. Cut off. Not often called. So he tanks forever and then re-raises. I'm going to say weighted. This is kind of a timing tell. I've seen a full tilt. Guys that don't want to give timing tells until 15 seconds left or whatever. It's kind of a sign to them like, okay, now is the time where I can perform my action. I don't suspect he was 4-bet bluffing me. Maybe he was. Maybe. But I don't. So now he raises up to 6 right after. I am going to test him again. If it's folded to me, if this guy calls, then I'm just going to fold. And we have blind. That just calling with the 10-7, and so he folds right away because I think he is thinking the same thing. Like this guy just folded to a 4. I'm not going to. You know, wants to take a step. The Lokeman doesn't. He's a short stack. In general, I don't trust short stacks. I think he can do this with a variety. Okay, aces, pair. If he has me, he has me. Oh, 4-7 suited. Well, yay, we hold up. So, I guess my read was pretty good against him. Becker, when will you learn? Pairs like to just call because they anyway. Of course, they can still make sets, and the best hand. I don't like to necessarily 3-bet him because just right hands out of position, and I figure we can often pick up continuation bets in hands like, where the flop's 8 high but he has nothing, he'll usually c-bet anyway, and we can pick up that extra bet instead of just making him fold right away pre-flop. Probably just like personal strategy stuff. I think a lot of players have betting tens there is a very good play, but for me, I don't like total dunks in the big blind. No offense, Lokeman, if you're watching this, but he didn't play that last hand so well. So if we do have the total dunks in the big blind, then seeing what we can get, what we can extract. Alright, so Hop G's raises it up in the cutoff again. We're finding that he's a little looser and more aggressive than we thought originally. I haven't seen any flops where he was the loser though, so I'm going to just continue to put the pressure on him. I just want to kind of see how everything else, once again, not a standard play by any means, but I think I'm more inclined than last time. I think it's kind of a strong and weak thing. Not this is reacts. Don't try this at home. And then he has us in terrible shape. Alright, so now we've gotten to showdown King 6 suited anyway. Okay, so that's interesting. I guess, I thought maybe he could have been adjusting to us. And he says thanks. It's all for the sake of science, right? So, what can we do? Maybe when he 4-bet instantly there, it was a strong and weak thing, but it was just a strong and strong thing, so definitely worth making a note. 4-bet instantly. So yeah, as I was saying, I thought maybe he was, the other time when he was thinking, that's when he was actually taking his stand. And we kind of misread that, but that's okay. You can't get it right every time, and now we've shown him King 6 suited on a jam. Once again, that's a terrible play in general. You don't want to be jamming in with King 6 suited. See what he was up to there. Now he leaves, which is kind of annoying because we could have really probably gotten some tasty value out of that guy. I'm just going to check back this flop. It's a flop where the check raise all in. He jams it in. We're getting terrible price. We'll just fold it. Seeing these, in the name of science plays like the jam with King 6, if you'd rather real solid poker, please let me know, because I don't want to time look at me. I kind of, but I do think it's worthwhile. I mean, it's for me. It's all a learning thing, and I don't mind, because I don't think my equity. I don't think that's like a play where I always lose $100. Obviously, when called, I still have a chance, and I don't think he can always call if he's just be the people who don't 4-bet bluff. Like they've figured it's again. If you look at the stakes, it's maybe these guys at the counter strategy, which is 4-betting yet. So we'll see. I'm gonna just see bet Well, I'll see what it wants with the sevens. Bow blue tick here. Doesn't strike me as a guy that I can. That it's a positive expectation play to just pound away on relentlessly. So I would have given up, I think, if he had called the flop. It was obviously just a great table. Mad Genius strikes me as a regular. They're not bad. Still will raise. As I was saying, interesting how the evolution takes place because this, well, it's a min re-raise. Seamus has been playing really tight. I think the chance of domination is too high to even call, even though it's a min re-raise. Especially because min re-raises are often so a situation where I can compound my. So as I was saying, it'll be interesting to see the evolution of how people 50 cent 5, 10, or 10, 20. It's funny, right? I mean, we were barely seeing any 3-betting. It was a premium hit. More 3, almost never seeing when other people are 3-betting. And so that was, somewhat of a poor read by me. Obviously, jacks we're going to raise up. Of course, the key to poker is always being the person who's won evolutionary scale, who play high. Suggesting most people aren't stacking off there or whatever. Whereas I'm willing to exploit these guys' tendencies. I think I'm just going to get the rest. Bet small is like a hand that picked up a draw or already had a draw and now wants to draw more cheaply. So he wants to draw for the rest. So he had a for the rest. This time. Okay. Definitely something that weaker players do, and throughout the limits is check call their draws almost no matter how strong. Then if they miss the turn, themselves to continue. If we have hand value, then we're gonna charge him for it. I will say though, on that board, 9, 8, 2, 5 with 2 hearts. He can also be doing that. Sorry, antivirus. He can also be doing that with hands that, like 9 hands that the flop at 1 or 2. Those are the pretty borderline. I mean, Ace 9 was kind of an arbitrary. 8-5 suited. I'll just call. Could consider testing. The bow coop is so poor in the big blind, we kind of want to bring him along if we're going to play a hand like this. Ace 10, I could consider checking here. I think both of my opponents are trying to play well. We'll bet once. Checks, min raises instantly. Check min raise. But I'm gonna call once, and I'll know on the turn whether he was for real. Smith, a really strong line, so he could have a draw here. I'm not gonna bet again though and walk into his double check raise trap, but I will consider calling. That's a card that we pretty much have to fold now. Huh. Not gonna bluff it, but checks. Henry. Say he had like ace 3, ace 4, ace, something like that. Say ace king, okay. So our hand. Once again, for those noting, if I plan on playing these limits ever again, I would take a note here, check min raise the flop with the strong hand, and then after that he did start checking, so queens. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger raise than pot, just because I don't think blue tig is going anywhere, and I just like to inflate the pot against him. You know, not a great flop, but one that we're going to be. This guy's shown a pretty good amount of. Now I'm inclined just to get the rest in here. We're getting a good price, and I think his most likely hand, maybe not the hand that he has, is like 10-9 or 7-9 or 7-8 or 6-8 or something like that, putting us on big cards, and I think he'll probably back his stack with it. It's possible that we got some medic. It's like a total donkey. I like to bet my draw out for a few reasons. First, and that he's willing to call with. But 8 or 7. And second of all, if he has a less draw. Here. I don't have. Oh, that 8 is such a terrible card. I'm gonna. An ace. From bluffing with like a 5-6 or a 10-9 or a worse hard draw. I think we're dusted here. Go down against a worse draw. And ship it. And yeah, 9-10. Great. So that's why I do like betting with a high card draw hand, because I think that often, you know, I don't think he bets that on both the flop and the turn. So, and there are so many cards that can come that will make us both. Not so many, I guess. Only 2 cards or enough scenarios that play out. I want to with a queen high flush draw on an ace high board, like we so often make. I find that min betting out like that is usually garbage. I could just call. I mean, I do have an okay draw. You know, I'm just gonna call and hope that he'll give up on the turn. We're getting 10-1 on our gutter. If he puts the minimum, we have a decent jack high. I'm definitely not going to bluff him off a pair, so I'm going to check, but ace 10, yeah. See, I knew he had some lame draw. The guys that call out of the blinds and then just min bet right out, they never have anything, man. Then they run a queen or an 8 or a king. So, this guy saw us betting our draw. All this board, obviously, but our hand is very strong. We want to start building the pot. King or an 8, or an underpair to the king. I don't think he's going to fold the flop. this up in about 5 minutes. Hopefully we got into a few interesting spots today, and you all were able to learn something. Queen 9 suited, we get no love. So I would say the big differences that we found in these limits are, first of all, our bad players were pretty much playing just as bad, or making similar sorts of mistakes, being loose and passive, not bluffing in spots where they should be bluffing in spots where they shouldn't be. You know, they're just so 8-9, you may think this is a similar situation with the Queen 6, but it's actually somewhat different because our 8-9 has absolutely no showdown value. Four-way pot, having someone raise. This goes back to the whole 25 and 50 cent video where this is a hand, especially 8-9. Sevens and queens are kind of, for unsophisticated sorts of players, are fairly disguised outs. So we're getting a perfectly. We're going to definitely pick up bets if we hit on the river. Kind of interesting to decide how much to bet here. I'm just going to jam it in, but I don't want to. I'm going to call Queen 9 or King Queen that was drawn. Ace Queen even, but they would probably raise that. And I figure so many of the hands that can call are going to call. That's like there's no sense in just fold on the flop, or I'll just try to make my draw. See if this is funny. It's such the obvious one where no one would ever bet out a king or a 5. I mean, so we make a 6. That's pretty trivial, though. He was calling in order to bluff. Here, 100% of his range is a king or a 5. So the counter strategies, but I would say now that betting strategy, guys, it's not going to work against everyone. Like the nits, you can't have the nuts just fold when they 3-bet, or if you have implied odds to make stack sizes, then you can call. But the guys that are bag style, those are the guys we need to be aggressively attacking with 4-bets. And a brief word on 4-bet. With 100 big blind stack of your stack, just because as you get above that, you're starting to get in hairy spots where you have to call, which is kind of like a disaster. If you price yourself in with a hand that's going to fair. So I like 4-betting stacks to like $29 or $28 because it still gives in two ways. With your big hand of 4, if they do decide to bluff, and with your smaller hands, it gives enough price where you're allowed to fold if they do jam it in. Alright, so we're just about to wrap this up. Hope this video was informative for you guys. Once plays I made this by any means, but this is not a blueprint for how to play, but it's more of a way to start to get you to think about some alternative lines. This will be the last hand I play. The Jack 7 suited. He check calls the flop. And remember, this was the same guy that check min raised. So, never bet think he can have overcards here. I'm going to bet one more time. I'm going to check it. Well, now I'm going to just bet because I think now he was kind of soft playing some big pair. And I'm going to bet 40. Near full pot. Try to make it look like. Just bet a lot because if he can call, he can call. Doesn't matter if I bet 30 or 40. Queen somehow. Doesn't matter if I bet 30 or 40. He's king. I think so. I'll just bet and let him make a decision. Alright, so that'll wrap it up for today. I hope you guys learned something. I hope I some of my donkey plays. And I can't wait to hear your guys' feedback. Talk to you guys in the forums. Bye bye.